It is true. What we leave here is more important than what we take with us. And that's a proud mama and a proud daddy out there to hear their son sing. I think on their 63rd anniversary, I think we got it wrong in the office, so I apologize for that. If you excuse me, Massey, we'll make that up to you somehow. Staying with Harold that long, you ought to get all the credit you could possibly deserve for that. How many of you are a disciplined person? Raise your hand if you're a disciplined person. All right, we have 1, 2, 3, a few. How many of you would say, you know what, Neil, I'm not really that much of a disciplined person? Or how many of you would say, well, Neil, it really depends on what you're talking about, whether I'm disciplined or not, right? Yeah, isn't that true? I mean, if you're like most of us, we are disciplined in some areas of our life. I mean, some people are very disciplined when it comes to finances, but when it comes to what we put into our bodies to eat, not so much. Some of us are very disciplined when it comes to business relationships and what we've got to do there, but sometimes maybe we're not as disciplined when it comes to family issues and all those kind of things. Well, let me take a little pressure off of you. I'm not going to ask you to be disciplined in all areas of life. What we want to talk about this morning is, are you disciplined when it comes to spiritual matters? Are you disciplined when it comes to what we're going to call today spiritual disciplines? Now, that's a very important question today, because I'm not so much interested if you're working out or not. I'm not so much interested if you're holding your fat calories or your fat grams to 10 grams or less a day. I'm not really interested how much money you have saved up. What I am interested in is, are you practicing those private spiritual disciplines that help grow your faith? If you'll recall, we're in a series if we're trying to figure out, how does God grow our faith? And if you've been here for any of the weeks, you know that what our goal is if you have this much faith, that we want you to have this much faith. And if you have this much faith, we want you to have that much faith, and on and on and on, because God is interested in seeing your faith grow. He doesn't want to just leave you where He finds you with the amount of faith that you have. He wants to move you forward and continue to help you grow your faith. And we're in a series where we're looking at 5 things that God uses to grow your faith. We're about week 3 or 4 of this, and we're almost done. We've got a couple of more weeks. But we've been looking at these 5 things based on a series of messages that Andy Stanley did. And these are the 5 things that we believe that God uses to help grow your faith. Practical biblical teaching, providential relationships. We've talked about those the last 2 weeks. Today, we're focusing on number 3, private disciplines, and then I'm actually going to take 2 weeks to talk about private disciplines because I think it's so important. So we're going to take that next week as well, and then personal ministry, and then finally pivotal circumstances. But the question is, when we talk about private disciplines, what are we talking about? Well, I've got some definitions here, some things you might want to think about when we talk about a private discipline. The first thing that you need to know about a private discipline is that it is practiced without an audience. Okay? I was talking this week, I was kind of convicted that we're supposed to be focusing on private disciplines, and so I started thinking, I'm not really have any private disciplines, so I better get back in the gym and start working out. And so I started working out because I didn't have any disciplines. And so 3 times this week I worked on that because the message was coming up, feeling a little conviction. Next week I'm done with that, so now I'll be focused on personal ministry or something, so I'll be done with the disciplines. But I remember I was working out, and then I told somebody I was working out, and they said, well, it's not private anymore, is it? Like, oh, man, that's right. I've got to work out without letting everybody know, or then it's not private, it becomes public, right? And so private disciplines are things that you do that nobody else knows. You're not out there saying, hey, look at me, I'm working out, or hey, look at all this things I'm doing. These are private, they're practiced without an audience, and it's just you and God doing whatever the discipline is. Now, today when we talk about private disciplines, we're going to talk about you. All right? We're going to talk about the benefit that you receive from practicing a private discipline. The truth is that when you practice a private discipline, if you do it properly, there are other people that will benefit from your practicing the private discipline. In fact, Adam Hood is down here, and he's still awake, so I'm going to talk to you, Adam, this morning. Adam's a big Auburn fan, Auburn football fan. And any other Auburn fans in there? Oh, wait, did you guys know that? We have 2 here today, okay? I'm not going to bring up the Baylor, Kansas thing, as I've already heard about that in the hallway. But today, or yesterday, Auburn played University of Louisiana Monroe High School. I think Monroe High School is what they're playing. And they scored like 52 points, if I remember correctly. And the reason they were able to score 52 points is they were working very diligently this summer in the heat, in the sweating, working all that practice, and their sacrifice helped them. But you know what? It made you feel pretty good yesterday as well, didn't it? That's right. And so the Auburn football team, they worked hard, and they made Adam happy. all right? Well, today we don't care about Adam, okay? We're just talking about the Auburn football player. So we want to focus on the benefit that you get as practicing a discipline, not the benefit that other people get from you practicing that discipline. Does that make sense to you? I mean, don't you want your doctors to have gone to school and paid attention? Don't you want that to have happened, right? We're not going to worry about the benefit that you get. In fact, I've been trying to work with my son who's struggling at school, and I'm talking to him saying, you know what, Nathan, someday somebody is going to depend upon you in some way, shape, form, or fashion, even if it is asking for French fries. They're still going to be depending on you to accomplish something, right? Don't you want to depend on somebody who paid attention in school and did their homework? Yeah, that'd be good. It's like, well, okay, you got to focus on that. Well, we're not talking about any of the extra benefits for other people. We're talking about you. Because in these disciplines, even though other people may benefit from them, we're focusing on the benefit that you get. Does that make sense? This means yes, this means no. I'm out of illustrations on that one. If you don't get it, just tap somebody on the shoulder and they'll try to explain it to you afterwards. But private disciplines, practice without an audience, and they are about you. Also, a private discipline is something you know that you should do. Okay? A discipline is something that you know you ought to be doing, but more than likely you're not doing. How many of you know that you're supposed to be doing something that you're not doing? Okay? All right. Then that becomes a discipline for you. You've got to go and do that because you know that you should. In addition to that, oftentimes the disciplines require training and repetition. Right? A discipline is something that you have to do over and over and over and over again, because if you do it just one time, does it benefit you? No, it doesn't. It's something that's got to be repeated. In fact, this past week, I've been trying to remember what Carl's schedule is in the Life Center. Because Carl, when you go over there, Carl wants you to do 50 reps, and I'm really more interested in 4. That's kind of my number. I just would like to do 4 of whatever it is. 4 is great. He's always wanting you to do more than 4. He wants you to like 50 or 50,000 or those kind of numbers as repetition. Why? Because he knows with repetition you get stronger and there's benefit in that discipline, all right? So those things are training, repetition, things you know you should be doing over and over again, and these will help you delay gratification, right? No pain, no what? No gain. I know former pastor would say, no pain, no pain. I know that's what Jay would always say. I understand that. But when you're working out physically, you're delaying the gratification. But here's the best thing about private disciplines that I love. This is my favorite one of all things. Did a lot of research, looked it up. Here's what I love. In private disciplines, attitude does not matter. I want you to think about that for just a moment. It's a discipline, and you can have the sorriest attitude while you're working out, and as long as you're still working out, you know what's happening to your muscles? They're getting stronger. They're getting better. Even though you got a sorry attitude about it, even though you don't want to see anybody, even though you don't want to be there, you don't like it, if you still practice that discipline, guess what? You get benefit from that. You don't want to eat your asparagus, and you're mad about eating asparagus or broccoli, whatever it is, you can have the sorriest look on your face. You can be the grumpiest person as long as you get that past those teeth, down that tongue, and down whatever the little saying is for the kids. Do you know what you get the benefit of? You get the benefit of eating those vegetables, right? That's what at least they tell me. I don't know. I haven't tried that yet, but that's what they're telling me, okay? So these are private disciplines, and that's my favorite one, because most of the time in the Bible, if you don't have the right attitude, you lose credit for that, okay? You don't get any credit for having a sorry attitude. But these disciplines, you can get some benefit even if you got a sorry, you don't lose the credit for that, all right? Now, Jesus did not talk about private disciplines. He said it in a different way. In Matthew chapter 6, see, we are going to get to Scripture. We do have Bibles around here. I know you're worried about that. But in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus talks about these private or hidden disciplines. He calls them, though, acts of righteousness. Here's what he says. In the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 6, he says, be careful not to do your acts of righteousness. We're going to substitute private disciplines there for acts of righteousness before men to be seen by them, because if you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Okay, let's go back and look at that. This is very important. It's pivotal for the next week or so. Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men to be seen by them, because if you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Now, notice something. It says if you do these acts of righteousness in front of people to be seen by them, you get no reward from your Father in heaven. But what is not said there is this, that if you do these private disciplines, not in front of men, that you will get what? A reward. Somehow God is seeing, God is watching when nobody else is watching, nobody else is seeing, and He will reward you for doing these acts of righteousness, practicing some of these private disciplines, which He goes into in just a moment. You will get benefit of those even though nobody else sees them. Now, is that our primary motivation for doing them? No, but isn't that a nice fringe benefit? Okay? How many of you have ever done the right thing and nobody saw you do the right thing? Can you think of that? Does that make you want to do the right thing again? No. In fact, it bums you out because most of the time when you're doing the right thing that nobody else is seeing, what is everybody else doing? Yeah, not the right thing, right? Well, here's the case, that if you're doing the right thing, private disciplines, the Father in heaven will see that and reward that. Now, He goes into 3 in chapter 6. We're going to cover one of the 3 today because time is moving pretty quickly today. But He gives us 3 things that He suggests or talks about when it comes to private disciplines. The first of those is giving, all right, beginning in basically verse 2, I think. And then after that, He talks about prayer as a spiritual discipline. This just goes verse by verse, Matthew chapter 6. And then finally, He talks about fasting. But since I'm a Baptist preacher, and I get paid for alliteration, here's what I came up with. Treasure, time, and tummy. Okay, those are the 3 things that we're going to kind of think about, talk about these next couple of weeks. Today we're going to talk about treasure. The next couple of weeks, next week we'll talk about time and tummy, put all those together, and talk about these ideas of private disciplines that if you practice them, not only will the Father reward you, but that reward is going to be that your faith grows. See, sometimes people will try to convince us that if you do good for God, God will reward you by giving you a new Lexus, okay? That's not the way God works, all right? The way He works is that He will increase what He thinks is important, and I believe that the reward He's talking about, don't have time to develop that today, but I believe the reward that He's talking about is that your faith will grow. When you practice these disciplines, I believe that your faith in God, your trust level in God will grow. Here's what we're going to talk about today. So, verse 2, when you give to the needy, He's already talked about those things first, right? That you've got to do these acts of righteousness. Don't do them in front of men, because if you do them in front of men, you lose credit for that. But if you do them in private, when you give to the needy, He talks about finances. When you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by men. Now, first off, you have to understand this. This is not the tithe in this passage. This is the extra giving, because what would happen was when the people went to the temple, when they were going to worship, the good churchgoers were going, people in need would line up. That's what they would do. They would line up side by side, and they'd all be begging you for something. Have you been to a foreign country where you can't even walk down the street because there's a whole line of people begging for something? You ever been there? You know what I'm talking about? That's kind of what was happening here. This is not the regular tithe. It's not what's being given to the storehouse. That was kind of required. But this is the extra stuff that you give to people on your way to church. Okay? So when you're giving to those on your way to church, don't make a big deal about it to be honored by men. Because I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. What was that reward? Everybody goes, wow, look at them. Look how nice they look, how much they're giving. Wow. So the picture is that people are coming to church and they're bringing lots of money, and they're seeing people that are all lined up, and I'm doling out money here and there and here and there, and you're looking at me and you go, man, he's generous. Look how nice he is. You know what I'm talking about? See, you understand that? It's kind of like what we do. Sometimes, fortunately, I don't have to come to church with my family. They drive their own car, and by the way, my wife parks in the back, 40 parking like you should, so you only need one car on campus. But oftentimes, when we would go to church together, we'd have to park in the furthest place in the parking lot so that we would have time to get it together so that we looked like good church people when we made it to the door. Has anybody ever had to do that? Maybe you had to drive around the church 2 or 3 times where you're trying to convince everybody. Everyone smiles. We're going to church, all right? Same thing here. When you're doing that, when you're putting on this impression, when you're pretending like you're somebody that you're not, and everybody sees that, and they think, wow, that's cool, then you just got your reward. That's it. You don't get anything else. That's all you get. But I tell you the truth, they've received the reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Now, Jesus is not talking about government here. I know it may sound very similar to Jesus talking about government, but He's not. Jesus said, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will what? Reward you. I do not think this reward is necessarily more cash. There's a lot of people who talk about, you got to sow your faith seed. You've heard that, right? And if you sow that faith seed, God will give you an abundance harvest. And guess who's harvesting at the same time? The person who's telling you to sow your faith seed with them. I know that. That's kind of the way that it works. I don't think that's the reward. I think God does that. I absolutely do. But I think the reward here is that your faith grows. Now, I want to talk about that. Why is God interested in your money? Have you ever thought about that? I mean, the Bible says that God owns the cattle on what hill? 1,000 hills. So why does he need mine, right? I mean, that's what we're always thinking about. Why is God interested in money? He has no way to spend it. He's created everything. He's just like the government. He'll just print more money if he needs more money, right? He'll just make more gold if he needs to. Why is God interested in your money? Well, it's because money is one of the things that God will use to grow your faith. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, faith is this idea of what would you do if you knew that God was with you. We've talked about that. I know faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. I know that. But what we're talking about as faith is how would we feel, how do we live, how do we respond if we knew that God were really in control, because it all comes down to trust. And so God is interested in your money, not because he has need of your money, not because he wants your money, but because he wants your heart. And do you know where our hearts are tied up in? In our money. What do I mean by that? Do you know there's only one place in life that you will trust God 100%? Whether you believe in the Judeo-Christian God, whether you believe in the Muslim God, whether you believe in the great outer space or the force, there is one place that you are trusting 100% that that person, entity, or God will take care of you. You know where that is? It's after that last heartbeat. It's after that last breath. Because all of us are having to trust 100% of what's going to happen after we die, because you know why? We have no other choice. You and I can't control anything after that happens. It's the only place that we have 100% of our trust is, okay, whatever happens after I die, God, you're in charge. Great force, you're in charge. Whatever it is, because we can't control it, we don't have any other options, so we have 100% of our trust in God at that moment. I hope you do at least. Because you have no other options at that time. You can't die and say, I don't really like this. I'm not going to die. I'm going to be alive again. You really don't have that option. You know, you can move someplace, and you may not like where you moved. And you can go, you know what? I'm not staying here. I'm moving. Have you ever moved someplace because it was bad? You didn't want to stay there? You can check in a hotel room and say, oh, it's not a clean place. They got bed bugs or whatever it is they've got. I'm not staying there. I'm going. I'm leaving. You know, when you die, you don't have another choice. You're dead. You don't have another choice. I'm going to be alive again. You don't have a choice. So that's the only place that we have all of our trust, 100% of our trust in God after we die. But do you know what we're trusting in before our last breath? We're trusting a dead president and Benjamin Franklin, aren't we? Because that's where our trust is. Our financial resources give us comfort. We're trusting in our ability to either make more money or to save more money or to have more resources. That's where our trust is if you really think about it. How many of you have direct deposit into your accounts? How many of you have that? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you check on your direct deposits to make sure they come in from whatever they're supposed to come in? I mean, some of y'all are more faithful than what y'all are about with me. I mean, you're trusting that money just to drop in your... I'm telling you, I check my accounts. When I'm expecting John C. to put that automatic deposit, I am checking. Not because I don't trust John C. I love John C. But that gives me some sense of security, does it not? How many of you have lost at least a couple of moments concern and worry about what the stock market has done in the last 3 years? Anybody concerned about that? Just me, all right? Y'all don't even care. You got all the money you need. I got to find a congregation that's poor because you guys are good. You're not worried about this kind of stuff. I'm concerned about those things. Why? Because somehow I feel like that's going to make me secure. I have a trust in that. Isn't it nice to know that you can go to the grocery store, most of us can go to the grocery store, and we can look around, and if we're hungry, we have some security that we can buy whatever we want in that grocery store. Isn't that a great security? Now, some of you can do that at the car lots. I can't do that at the car lots. Some of you can do that in the homes. You can do that. I can't do that. Maybe you can. That's great. But we have so much security here because that's where our trust is, and God's saying, you know what? I want your trust someplace else. In fact, some of you are nervous already that I'm talking about money today, aren't you, right? You've got an emotional response to, he's talking about money. He shouldn't be talking about money. I'm not talking, he's talking about money. Why is that? Well, I'm telling you, when you haven't worked something very difficult in a long time, you have an emotional response to that. I got into the Life Center and said, I'm already getting tired just doing that for this many times after working out. Because there's an emotional response when you start working out. Your muscles are screaming at you, stop! Isn't that right? It's an emotional response. Don't do that. That hurts. Why is it that we have an emotional response when it comes to money? See, it's just like those faith-stretching things. And what God wants to do is, he's more interested in you. He doesn't care about your money, but the best way that he can get your attention is to talk about your money and asking you to give some of it to him. Because when you do, you are taking a little bit less trust in your resources and what you have, and you're handing that over to God, and you're saying, God, I trust you to take care of me. It's a faith stretching, and you don't have to like it to get the benefit of that. Did you know that? I know the Bible says that he loves a cheerful giver. I know that. But he will accept a begrudging one as well. Won't he? Because when you release that money, whether you got a smile on your face, whether you're happy about it or whether you're not, when you give that over, that's a spiritual discipline, and God says, aha, I've got you, thank you. Now, what's supposed to happen is that disciplines turn into something you actually enjoy, and from things that you actually enjoy to become something that you love, and things that you love, it becomes a lifestyle, and then eventually, if it's a lifestyle, it becomes something you can't not do anymore. You know some people that have done that with a discipline, don't you? Somebody who starts working out and they hate it, but then they begin to enjoy it and they catch their second wind, and then they can't live with that. I remember the pastor that I served with in Oklahoma. He just worked out all the time. He loved it, and he would take us on trips sometimes, me and Blake, and he would say, Blake and Neil, you guys want to get up early and work out? No. Thank you. We appreciate it, Pastor. He couldn't not work out because it would be different because that discipline. In fact, see, some of you have a discipline of going to church, and you may not enjoy it anymore, but you can't not come because your week feels strange if you're not here, doesn't it? See, that should happen in all these other disciplines as well. And because money is so important to us, he asks us to give some to him to verify that he is in charge and that we take our trust instead of our stuff into him. And if you don't do that, your faith won't grow like it could. Now, could the church get benefit if you gave money? Yeah, we could. But you know what? It's not about that. It's really not about that. It's about your faith growing, because when you give your money away, you are saying, God, I trust you to take care of my need. That's why God is interested in what? The first 10% or the last 10%? It's the first, isn't it? He wants the first fruits. Why? Because if you're making sure that you get everything paid first, then pay God last, where's your trust? You're saying, wait a minute, God, I got to take care of everything first. Once I get everything taken care of, then I'll give you yours. That is not trust. It is trust to say, Lord, here's yours first. Good strategy. Give first, save next, spend last. That'd be kind of a little good strategy, I know. Many of you probably know that, my generation, a little confused on the order of that. That's the reason we're kind of where we are today. But that ought to be the order, because when I give first, then I am trusting that God will take care of my need. He always wants the first fruits. And if you're not willing to do that, your faith is not going to grow. But when you give that first, then God's got to come through, doesn't he? See, God doesn't have to come through if it's the last 10%, because you got it all covered. He has to if you give it first. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Here's what I'm going to challenge you to do, and time's gone. Here's what I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to make a commitment to God for the next 30 days. Next 30 days. That you will pick a percentage. The Bible has some suggestions on what that percentage is, but that's between you and God, whatever you want to choose. Because I have no idea what anybody gives anywhere in this congregation. I have no idea. One day I might, but I don't right now and don't want to. But I'm going to challenge you for the next 30 days to pick a percentage that whatever money God sends to you, that you will give that percentage away. Okay, now some of you are already tithing, you're at 10%, some of you are at 15%, some of you may be at 20, 30, 40, or 50%. But if you're not doing that, I want you to pick a percentage, and if you have a percentage, maybe to increase that percentage, and then I want you to pick a place to give that. If you don't want to give your money to this church, that's not a problem. You don't trust us, that's not a problem. Find some church, find some place, find some ministry, someplace else. I don't care what it is. If you're a guest from out of town, go back to your home church. If you're here, maybe Rockaway Beach. If you don't, whatever you want to do. I don't care where it goes. I'm not interested about the money. I'm interested in your faith growing. And your faith won't grow unless you give money away. It's not going to. It's just not. Because you're not practicing the discipline. So here's what I want you to do. Challenge. 30 days. Pick a percentage. Whatever God sends your way. And then I want you to pick a place to put that money. And then I want you to do that first. Not last, first. Not halfway through, no, first. I don't care if it's gross or what's the other one? Net. I don't care which one it is. I'm interested in your faith. I don't care about money, about your faith. You do that first when it comes in, and then as God leads you and lets you see a need, then you respond to it. But when you respond to the need, you don't make a big deal about it. You just respond to what God asks you to do. Now, here's the thing God will do to you. If you sign up for this, here's what God's going to do to you. I really think He's going to drop money unexpected into your lap. Now, I'm not saying this is the way that it works, okay? I'm not saying it's work. This is the commitment that I made, and guess what came in the mail yesterday? When I refinanced my house, my escrow payment came to my house yesterday. I'm thinking, Lord, why didn't you wait, and why didn't that check come last week? Because now I'm on this message, I'm private discipline, I made this commitment. Now you send the check on that day on a Saturday. Mail shouldn't even run on Saturdays, right? I mean, you hardly get anything, just junk mail, all that kind of stuff. And guess what? Money came in the mail. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen to you. I'm not promising you that. But I just know the way God is, and God loves to mess with you because He's messing with my what? Okay, the whole message is about what, folks? I mean, you're just missing. What's God messing with? Whether I trust Him or not. That's what He's messing with. Why? Because now I'm like, well, Lord, that's for all those people out there that come to church and say, that's not for me. I'm the one preaching the message, Lord. You know, I'm giving a great percentage. You know I'm doing something. Yeah, I understand that, Neil. But guess what? Boom, there's that check that you knew was coming. And then I saw a tire rebate check that's on its way being mailed. I'm thinking, great, Lord, thanks. There's some more money I got to give you because I've made this commitment, this percentage commitment, then you're going to drop a rebate check in my life. I'm not saying God does that all the time. I just know that God messes with me because He's not interested in my money. He's interested in what? My faith, my trust. He wants it to grow. And here's what I love about this. Even if you don't have a good attitude about it, God will still grow your faith. Like, come on, people, it doesn't get any better than that. So, do you want your faith to grow? Maybe not. Maybe not as much as you did before you came in this room, because now it's going to cost you something, right? Saying, I'm okay with that medium-sized cup of faith, Lord. I don't need the large one. I'm just happy with the medium. That's fine. I'm good with medium today. And am I trying to get more money for the church? I hope you know my heart. I hope you know that's not true. But I am interested in your faith growing. And the only place that you have 100% trust in God is when you die, because then you're banking on everything, and up until that point, you're going to trust yourself, trust your resources, and God may be saying, you know what? Your faith won't grow unless you trust me first. I know you're on unlimited income. I understand that. I recognize that. I'm not asking you to give sacrificially. I'm asking you between you and God, talk about it, see what you're supposed to do, and see what God does. Here's what I think about God. I think that when you trust God, He rewards those who trust. And I don't want anybody coming to me and say, hey, Neil, look, I gave you a $5,000 check. Do I get credit for that? No. You just lost it right there by showing everybody what you just did, okay? You do it without anybody else seeing it. Because our Father who sees you practicing private disciplines, acts of righteousness, where nobody else sees it, He rewards you. Not with new cars, not with your hair growing back, not with having a beautiful wife, none of those things. What grows is your faith. And you know, the only thing that really matters in this life is whether your faith is really growing and that you trust in Him or not. If we practice the private disciplines.